Today I'm talking with John Ralph. He is the head of Gawura School here in Sydney. Welcome to Education Review, John. Can you firstly tell me just a bit about Gawura School?
Sure. So Gawura School's a fairly new school in that we've been around only for 12 years. First started in 2007 under a previous principal of Philip Heath. He's now the head at Barker College. And it was a school created to try and change, make a difference in regards to closing the gap in Indigenous education. Started off as a Christian social justice project, but it's kind of morphed into what we originally had as 7 students. There's 51 Indigenous students in the whole school, from kindergarten to year 12. And one of the nice things that our school does is, although we are a separately registered junior school, as in a K to 6 school, once our year 6 students finish year 6, they're able to go into our St Andrew's Cathedral High School. So yeah, it's lovely. We're technically a school within a school, which is really nice.
All right. And John, tell me a bit about your background and what brought you to Gawura.
Well, I've been at St Andrew's for a number of years, and 3 years ago now, the previous head of Gawura moved on to another school. And so they asked me just to step into the role, in an acting position for a while. I really loved the role. I enjoyed working with the community immensely, and the students are amazing. And so it went to a national recruitment advertisement, and so I applied for that and was lucky enough to be accepted.
Good. Now, Indigenous perspectives are a critical part of what's taught in the classroom at Gawura. Trying to implement an Indigenous perspective throughout everything. Can you give me some examples of how that plays out in the classroom environment? Yeah,
sure. So within all of our programs, we embed Indigenous perspectives in regards to historical events, but also current events as well. We have a special Indigenous perspectives session for an hour each week where our students are able to solely look at a certain specific topic to do with Indigenous current affairs or Indigenous histories. But also we work very closely with the St Andrew's Cathedral Junior School, and they also run similar programs, in fact the same programs to be honest. And we've had one of our Year 6 teachers recently set for homework not just the usual homework that Year 6 people might do, but also looked at looked into various Indigenous massacres as well that happened in the post European settlement. So
like the frontier.
Yeah, the frontier and so forth. Yeah. So we're very keen to talk about like the themes around voice, treaty and truth, which was this year's NAIDOC theme, and we're very keen to explore those and bring those to the forefront. So our students are aware, they're learning the history, which is really good.
Sure. What about specifically in terms of, I guess, like teaching literacy and numeracy? Do you think that are there any kind of like a unique ways of teaching from an Indigenous perspective, or do you have more of a traditional kind of approach to that?
We have small class sizes in Gawura, that's one thing. Yeah. So we're not in a class of 24. Our Gawura students are usually, it's around about 10 to 12 within a class. We are able to focus, have a really good, strong individual focus on those classes with one core teacher teaching literacy and numeracy. As far as programs go, we follow the THRAS spelling program, but that's proven to be very beneficial for Indigenous students, and that the results and the research from that show that they're able to understand how that works, and in particular the different sounds that letters make. And so this has been also endorsed by various Indigenous educational leaders. So Professor Chris Sara, who's the leader of the Stronger Smarter Institute, he's also endorsed THRAS.
Okay.
And I saw him at a conference, 18 months ago. So yeah, he says it's a great program too. Yeah, wonderful man, one of my heroes.
Yeah, that's good. Gawura School's also been called a Lighthouse model for Indigenous education. Can you explain that term to us? And why is it that you only have a relatively small cohort still?
Well, first of all, we're working on increasing that cohort size. When it first started back in 2007, it only had 7 students. Sure. And that was more about just enrolment numbers. When we first took off, it wasn't... approaches were made to various communities around the inner city to try and, have students come into the school. And there was a lot of, a lot of I don't want to say misunderstanding, but a lot of questions about, perhaps why was the school being created and, so forth. All that type of thing. But over time, I think the communities have realised that we are here to try and make a difference and try and support that. So as far as the Lighthouse model goes, as I said before, we're a school within a school, so we have 32 students, K to 6 at the moment, but we're within the premises of St Andrew's Cathedral School. And what is a Lighthouse model about that is that our students have a core literacy, they have a core teacher that teaches literacy and numeracy, but for all the other key learning areas, the students are able to go into the various Year 5 classes or Year 6 classes to learn things like drama, history, geography, music, PE. Right. And so they're building friendships and relationships with not just their own little Gawura cohort of students, but with a whole lot of other non-Indigenous students as well. And we've found that traditionally that when our students leave Year 6 and go into Year 7, they're going from a group of 9 or 10 students into a cohort of 170, and it can be a little bit daunting, a little bit, deer in the headlights. Whereas this way, the students are fully engaged with the entire Stage 3 group, and that which St Andrew's Cathedral School is approaching 190 at the moment. And so our students are able to build, friendships and relationships with other students, but also with teachers too. Sure. So they're not just getting used to one teacher, they're getting used to several teachers too, which sets them up for success in Year 7.
Absolutely helps with that transition because it can be difficult.
Yes,
for various reasons. Okay, a big part of Gawura School is the Wiradjuri language program. Can you tell me a bit about the program and I guess the language itself? Yes.
Yeah. So our school is unique in that we are on Gadigal land, and so 8 years ago when we looked at teaching language, we wanted to teach Gadigal because we're on Gadigal land. At the time, though, 8 years ago, we couldn't find anybody to help staff that or teach Gadigal language. Right. The resources for Gadigal were also fairly low and not abundant. Yeah. And then when we looked at all of our students, unlike a school if we were situated in Dubbo or if we were in a school in Byron Bay where everybody was Bundjalung, our students actually come from a number of different nations around New South Wales, and we've even got some from interstate. We've got a boy graduating Year 12 this year from Narrandjeri Nation, which is just south of Adelaide in South Australia. But the one common nation that most students had a connection with was Wiradjuri. And Wiradjuri is, I think it's the 6th largest nation amongst all the Aboriginal nations in Australia, geography size. And when you think about the towns in New South Wales that Wiradjuri caters for, you're looking at Dubbo, Griffith, Wagga Wagga, Albury. It's quite a large geographical area and also pretty big population.
Big regional areas.
Major regional centres, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Finally, how do children come to the school, or are they selected, or how does that work?
Yeah, we advertise every year for students to come to school. We've also got an Indigenous community liaison officer who goes around to preschools and speaks to prospective parents and so forth in those preschools to try and apply to our school. The original founders of the school wanted it to be for inner city children, So we're looking at suburbs such as
Glebe.
Redfern, Glebe, Pyrmont, Woolloomooloo, and so forth. Now, having said that, we have got some families that one family comes in from Peakhurst each morning. Another family comes in from down near close to Hurstville Way, and so although it is predominantly inner city, it's not just exclusively for inner city. We also wanted to target low socioeconomic areas too, to try and close the gap in those regions. So a lot of our students do come from areas surrounded by Housing Commission and so forth. But one of the nice things that our school's been able to do is, particularly with the relationship building that occurs, we have got a Year 6 boy this year who plays rugby for our Saturday sporting team. They had a game that was a little bit out of Sydney, and we had a family who lives in Gladesville on the waterfront, drive into Waterloo and pick him up and take him out there. So there's a lovely cohesion happening, and our parent body are amazing. They're very non-Indigenous parents and Indigenous parents are able to come together and not kind of look at the differences, but look at acceptance and acknowledge and support the school community immensely. It's really good.
John Ralph, thank you for talking to Education Review.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thank you. Hey. I'm here with Leanna Carr-Smith. She is a Wiradjuri language teacher at Gawura School here in Sydney. Welcome to Education Review, Leanna. First of all, could you just tell me a bit about your background, where you grew up, when you learnt Wiradjuri language?
So my name's Leanna Carr-Smith, and I come from Dubbo, which is in Wiradjuri country. That's my mother's country, and then on my father's side, I'm Wiradjuri too. So his family come from Bathurst, like Cowra. So I have Wiradjuri heritage on both my mother and my father's side. Right. And I grew up in Dubbo, and that's where all my family is. Yep. And still are.
Yeah. Okay. And what what inspired you to go into language teaching?
I think for me personally, the opportunity came up. That's what for me. So my great grandmother was a part of the stolen generation, and she was one of the first lot of kids that was taken under the Act. So when she came to Dubbo when she was a young girl and she met my grandfather and they married, she was forbidden to speak language. So with my grandmother and my great grandmother, we would only learn it when we were out in the bush, like when we were on country. Yeah, we were never allowed to speak it like in town and in the community. And we did at home, but that's just how it was for us. Yeah. We just learned it when we were out in the bush and on country. And so when I was little, I had a language, like a vocabulary of Wiradjuri, but it wasn't until I got older and then, language was, I suppose, revitalised by Uncle Stan Grant and Dr. John Rudder, that I got interested in it again. Sure. Which was about 20 years ago. Yeah.
Those language revitalisation programs are so important, really. Yeah. Because stuff can get lost over time.
Yeah, and so about 20 years ago, I decided to relearn my language, my grandmother's language, and that's how it started for me. And because I already had some knowledge of language, the relearning was different for me because I didn't lose my language. I already had it, but I just wanted to relearn it. Sure. So that's when the opportunity came up. I was one of the lucky people who actually got to work with Uncle Stan Grant before he retired from teaching language, and I really enjoyed talking and participating in that. And that was a long time ago now, and if it wasn't for people like him, then. And Dr. John Rudder and others in the community, in Wiradjuri community, it wouldn't have never have happened. Because I think for us, we're one of the lucky, and I don't know, lucky's not probably a good word, but we're one of the language groups that have our language, and it's strong, and it's because of, because of people like my great-grandmother and my grandmother who had knowledge of language. So, like I said, we were learning it, but it was done like on country, not out publicly. Not at school. There was nothing at school. There was nothing in the community. When I was growing up.
Forbidden.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yeah, we was always threatened with the welfare and stuff like that. And it is what it is. That's what it was for us, So, like I said, for me, when I got older, and then the language courses started out at in Dubbo and Parks and in Bathurst and Orange and all around Wagga, then I jumped at the opportunity. So that's where it started for me. Yeah.
And tell me about your daily kind of. Do you teach Wiradjuri language every day here, or no? Is it part-time, full-time?
Part-time. So Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays.
Right, Tuesday and Wednesdays, and tell me about your classes and kind of daily kind of activities and things like that.
So teach with the Gawura students and then teach the junior schools. But the program, I like to teach the backstory to language. So with the junior school, it's a 30-minute program, but they still get the same language program as what the Gawura students do, because I sit with them for an hour. So, and I like to teach the backstory to language. Because, like I've said it before in the past, and, I want to be out of a job, and I hope that the Gadigal language is revitalised. And, but for now it's Wiradjuri, and a lot of our Aboriginal students identify as Wiradjuri, so that's why they chose Wiradjuri back in the day. And it's one of the strongest, like I said, we're lucky because we have our language is strong. And so I was happy to step into that role. And like I said, with the little people, with the kindies, the year ones, it's all about song and dance and making it fun. So I've made up a lot of just activities, and we play, and we read stories, and so their learning is through hands-on and play and making it fun. So with the junior school in Gawura, it's a little bit different. It's more about the phonics, the sounds of language, and where language sits, and how it's different to English.
Sure.
Yeah, so I want to explain like the structure of language, because these students are old enough to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not the linguistics or anything, it's just the basic stuff.
Yeah, gotcha.
And because one day, we hope that the Gadigal language will come back in, and that's our dream, that as a collective, that and when it does, then the students will be able to identify the language, the sounds of language. But the majority of our Gawura students identify as Wiradjuri. So I really enjoy talking to them about our language, and it's their grandmother's and their grandfather's language. And for me, it's, it's filling that cultural void. And we do that as a collective here too, which is something that, I love to do. Yeah.
Can you... how you're saying you talk to the junior students, about the main differences between Wiradjuri and English. I mean, what do you think's one major difference between both languages? Like, if you could think of one main thing, is it some things, I don't know, some certain words don't exist, or or certain emotions. Can you think of anything? Because I don't have a knowledge of it at all, so I'd just like to know what would be a key difference, or what you think.
I think too, when you delve into language a little bit more, like especially Wiradjuri language, there's certain words that we have, and then there's words that we don't have. So when the students ask you that, like I have to think sort of and think about the language because and the sounds are different. So we there's certain sounds, certain letters that will go together to make a particular sound.
Yeah.
So when
Which are foreign to me when I see them.
Yeah. So when people look at like say a word that looks this big, then you have to break it down. So I like to teach them the phonics and then how to break it down, and then the actual like the prefix of language, because it's past, present, future tense.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you say it, and that they actually get that idea, because I think that's important that they understand the way that the words are structured in language.
Yeah.
So in the wider community, you'd call it like back to front English, but for us as Aboriginal people, especially Wiradjuri, it's not. I now know because of other language groups that like Italians like that too, and there are other like language groups around the world that speak like that too.
Yeah,
so I see similarities, and some of the students here, they actually see the same similarity in their cultural background. So it's the same way that we speak similar as Indigenous people. So I like to explain that so that they can understand when we do learn new words how the word will sit. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're pretty smart. Like they catch on pretty quick.
I bet.
Yeah.
Leanna Carr-Smith, thank you for talking to Education Review.
Thank you. Mandangul. Thank you.